Welcome to Business Class, a podcast for people wanting to upgrade their thinking, upgrade their learning, and upgrade their life. I'm your host, Eugenia Panderhos, founder of Business Class Collective, best-selling author, and life coach. If you're an entrepreneur, a startup, or someone who dreams of reaching their full potential, then you're in the right place. You'll feel empowered and inspired to design the life you've always wanted. Let's do this. Hello, gorgeous people, and welcome back to the show. I hope you're having a wonderful week. I just want to chime in here and just express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you who chime in, give me feedback, subscribe to the show, and encourage me to keep bringing you episodes of interest. And I love sharing this journey with you, but even more, I love receiving the feedback, knowing that it's truly appreciated. So thank you once again. This week, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Michael Taliangis. I have known Michael for many years, and more recently I can include him as a very close friend and someone that I have a wonderful rapport with and a lot of respect for. Michael has an amazing career. He's one of these people that has an infectious disposition. He's quite funny and very accomplished. So let's just have a look a little bit at his working history. So Michael was a survey and cartographic draftsman with the SA Department of Mines. He was an industrial personnel officer at the State Public Service Board, Secretary State Planning Authority, Chief Admin Officer Mental Health Services, Principal Consultant at Medical Accounting and Business Services, General Manager West Torrens Football Club. He's had a number of artwork exhibitions. He's the Assistant Director, Industrial Relations Health Commissioner. He's been Manager Human Resources at the University of South Australia, a partner in a family restaurant, Senior Lecturer at the University of South Australia and a lecturer at Regency TAFE, a project manager at Olive's SA Strategic Plan, and he's currently and has continued to be the principal consultant and registered agent for workplace teams. So Michael has had an amazing career. He has so much knowledge, so much wisdom, and he is going to delight us with his story today. So let's get started. Michael, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So, should we get started?
Why not?
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Other than the fact that I'm aging too quickly, my background is that my parents were both refugees from Asia Minor. They were caught up in the exchange, but prior to that, they were both born and lived in an area called Levisi, which had a port of Makri. They are now Kakayoy and Fethiye in southern Turkey. My grandfather, he was a very studious, very busy person. He employed as many as 600 people, and he was involved in shipping, coal, fruit orchards, olive oil, incense, and other activities. My maternal grandmother, she was a Polaris. Maternal grandfather, he was a Polaris. They had between them 6 children, 1 boy, 5 girls, and my mum was the youngest of the family, in the same way as I was the youngest of ours. My father, on his side, his real name was Dimitriou, and when they did the visit to the Holy Land, they became Hadzi Dimitriou. But when my paternal grandfather went as a travelling salesman to Rhodes in 1820, they lived in a place called Dalyani in Turkey. He went to Rhodes, they call him Taliangis. And that's where the name Taliangis came from, right? But he was never really a Taliangis. And that area of Turkey still exists as a Dalyani, all right? And there are hotels, bays, a lot of development in that precinct called Dalyani. So that's where we got that name from. When they were forced to leave, my father was caught up as a refugee and became part of that effectively film of Z, where the Turks marched the Greek prisoners up and down the Turkish coast for 5 years. And he was part of that. And what they did is they had over 5,000 people that they just kept marching up and down until they dropped. He and one of his cousins, they escaped in the 4th year. He then got to a place called Kalamata near Delphi. And his mother, 3 brothers, all finished up in that part of Greece. One of the older brothers in my dad's side of the family, he came to Australia in 1912 to avoid being conscripted to the Turkish army. But as I say, the rest then came with my dad and his mother and 2 of his siblings. They came to Australia in 23. The reason they left was that they were not wanted by the Greeks, right? They were obviously not wanted by the Turks, and they were rather poorly treated and treated as Durgospora, or Turkish seeds. So they just packed their bags and came here. My mum, as I say, she was the youngest of the Strogili family. One of her sisters went to Gare, and she then married a person from Gastelorizzo in 1928. And they came to Australia, and that uncle by marriage, he then became the first president of the Greek community of South Australia. My father and his mother, the illegitimate son of their daughter or one of their daughters, they all came to Australia in 1923. There's not a lot of history as to what they did or achieved. In fact, precious little. I'm very disappointed there was no real development. My dad and his family, he became an apprentice baker because my grandfather on my dad's side, he was the only baker for the town of Livisi. Other than that, my mum she went with her next older sister. She went to Dinos, and her father and mother went with them. And my mum and her sister came to Australia as a male bride in 1937. They lost everything as a result of the war. My grandfather, he had his best friend in Turkey was the Turkish bank manager. And he had told my grandfather, that the war was coming and that they're going to be evicted and everything else. I'll transfer all your assets to Rhodes, which he did. There were 30,000 gold sovereigns, right? And the Turkish guy transferred it all, and it was all stolen by the Greeks when it got to Rhodes. So he went penniless. There's a whole story, but on the other side of the penny, when my dad and mum got together, I had a sister. She was born a year after they got married here. They married in the Angican Church on North Terrace in 1937. My sister was born in 38 and I was born in 39. And that's the history of where I am. That's how I came to be.
It's fascinating, Michael. There's so many layers to this story, and there's success, and there's hardship, endurance, there's discrimination.
All of the above.
And persecution and exile. And here we are in South Australia on this beautiful winter day, having a talk, having a discussion about life and your journey. But this gives me great insight into the man that you've become and the resolve that you've had in your life, because you've called on those ancestors and those stories to become the person that you are. And we are the sum of the people before us.
Yeah, I agree with that. And my father was not a person that would get out and achieve anything. We were decidedly poor. I can't remember my dad ever showing any leadership skills, giving me any tutorship. I don't remember any Christmas presents from him. I know that he, in the whole of my life, he never once came to my school or introduce me to a textbook or anything. We never wanted for food. We always had big stomachs. In fact, I've got photographs to prove that. But no, there was nothing there. My mother, on the other hand, because she'd come from a home where in her youth they had three governesses living at home, plenty of money. They learnt ballroom dancing, they had the long gowns and everything. She was the rock that gave me the leadership and I guess the values that I then took forward. And by and large, language skills, values, etiquette, caring, yeah, all of those things, 95% of them came from my mum.
That is wonderful to have a mother like that, to actually show you so much more than just being a mother, but actually tutoring you through life, guiding you. And your mum was probably a shining beacon, and she had knowledge and experience that she could pass on to you.
Yes, she did.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. That's fascinating, Michael. Tell me about your business life.
Well, technically, my business life was being a public servant. In my days, because we must remember when we were born, a long time ago, there was no such thing as tutoring for career tutoring or what do they call them?
Counselling.
Counsellors and all that sort of stuff. In fact, when I finished school, and I'll come back to that shortly, I didn't even know what the careers were that were available. No books or anything in newspapers or anything at home that I could lean on. No, none. So it was a case of choose what you thought was the best fit.
Got into the public service and you've had this amazing career. I mentioned it in the introduction because you've worked across different departments and you've had positions of influence within those departments. So you were able to work your way up and influence outcomes.
Yeah, and that was a positive action I took. Once I got into the public service, I was a draftsman for the first 9 years of that, but I always had a zeal for more knowledge, personal advancement, helping the community. I was very much involved with Greek clubs and societies and did all of that sort of thing. I then had, I guess, a stupid suggestion embedded in my brain that I would like to be the first ethnic premier of South Australia. And I voiced that. I was already on the state executive of the Liberal Party of South Australia. But when I said I wanted to be the first ethnic premier, that was like signing my own death warrant. If you were an ethnic in those days, you were a threat. You weren't of any value. You weren't of any value, seriously. I can remember when I was in the service and I'd made some rapid advances in promotion, and that when I got to being Secretary of the State Planning Authority, I think there are only 10 positions I could ever aspire to. That's how few advantages that there were for me. If you were Anglican, you could get in the education department. If you were Catholic, it would be in the highways. Barriers put up for promotion, even amongst the Anglos themselves. There were a lot of obstacles put in the way.
Very difficult times, discriminatory.
Yeah, very.
And but you made your way.
Yeah.
What happened with wanting to be premier? So that was something you aspired to, realised you couldn't because of your ethnicity.
Well, I realised that later in the equation. By that time, I'd already done things like being a guest speaker at the Australian Citizenship Convention when I was 16. I was the ethnic coordinator within the Liberal Party at 24. I'd already made moves in that direction, but even in my career, I had taken positive steps to not to become a specialist in one area. I just wanted to be knowledgeable in all areas. I took positive steps, as I say, after 9 years in the mines department, to start changing careers every 4 years. I didn't go to the Public Service Board. The Public Service Board found me out, I don't know how, from within their records, and invited me to go to the library, study whatever I could on computers to help set up the South Australian Government Computer Bureau. And in my very knowledgeable and well-researched way, after 3 months at the library, I went back to the public service board and said, there's no future in computers. What else can I do? So they took me over as an industrial advocate. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. But there was a future in computers.
Yes, yeah. Well, so I found out.
It's funny about that, isn't it?
And I'm still not knowledgeable in what I should have learned 60 years ago.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What sets you apart? I think it's your mindset.
Yeah.
I think it's your mindset, your can-do attitude, your mother's influence, of course.
Yes.
Which is quite evident with, the associations you belong to as a young person. So how do you see yourself now as what sets you apart? What makes Michael Michael?
Well, two things. I have to thank my late wife for her understanding in a lot of my choices, because every 3 or 4 years I say to her, I'm looking for a new job, or I'm going to apply for a job with so-and-so, or do something else. And she, even though she was, in my opinion, a great academic, she was prepared to put her career aside so that I could achieve any of the objectives I wanted. I always wanted to know that I could do, and I don't know that I ever set myself aside to say I'm better than him. There was never that goal, and nor did I ever believe that I was better than the next person. I would always do the best that I could in the job that I could. Once I'd mastered that, I wanted a new challenge, right? So then I'd look for a new challenge. And people would say to me, how come you're doing such a good job with training people and then they get promoted around you or beside you or over you and all that sort of stuff? I said, because that's their goal, not mine. Mine was to do the best I could and develop around me people who had the talent to do what they needed to do. Yes. It wasn't a case of ever saying, I'm better than somebody else.
Yes. Yeah. So the competition wasn't with others, the competition was within yourself, to better yourself each and every time.
Oh, yeah, yes, but to also allow other people around me to better themselves.
Yes.
Even if that meant that, as it happened in a couple of cases, of people that used to work for me became my boss.
So what have been your memorable high in your career?
Yeah, good question, that one. I laboured on that one. I knew that it was coming, and I really, I guess the 2 or 3 things that I relished most was knowing that I had achieved what I was obliged to achieve, right? But I didn't stand on the corner waving a flag and say I've done it or anything like that. So that was one. Another one was when the councils of Norwood, Kensington and Norwood, and Unley, they wanted to zone all of Fullerton Road, Greenhill Road, from Portrush Road down to Anzac Highway as prime residential, all of that. And those councils paid a big quid for one of the best town planners in Australia at the time to prepare a report that they could then take to their respective councils. And 2 of my friends, 2 Greek friends, had properties on Fullerton Road, and they said, what a lot of rubbish. And I said, yeah, I agree. And they said, well, you've got the job of fighting the application. So they paid a very, very, very small fee, right, to me to kill that bloody report by this planning person. And that's why it's all now district offices and district commercial. And so right from Portrush Road down to Anzac Highway, they're all offices. The reality was, whilst they were all prime residential pieces, right? With the traffic corridors that they were generating, you couldn't get in or out of the property. Yeah. If you lived there, right, you'd have constant traffic going past. Your kids couldn't come home at night. Kids couldn't leave the property in the morning to go to school. And we fought the good fight, and they decided to leave it as it was. So that was probably one. When I got to the university, I again met some opposition because, with great respect to some of my fellow workers, they were breaching the law and breaking the law daily. They were abusing rights that they shouldn't have. They were using government funds for private publications and all that sort of stuff. And I think they were quite happy to see me move on.
You had someone looking over their activities and not agreeing with how they were behaving.
Yeah, well, one of the situations is that there's a job advertised, and I was manager for human resources at the University of South Australia at the time. My boss applied for the job to which I reported, but he didn't have what the council had determined were the minimum qualifications for the position. You needed a double degree to apply for that job. So when my acting boss at that time had been acting in the job for 2 years, he was a recruit from the public service, Commonwealth Public Service. When he applied for the job, I didn't shortlist him. And the leaders of the university said, appoint him or you're out. We'll see you in the court. You're going to be fired. And I just took the challenge on. I said, good, do it. I said, because the rules of the university and the bylaws of the university were mandatory. We couldn't do it. So they had to reschedule, change the rules of the university, re-advertise the job, allow this guy to be appointed, right? And they did their best to get rid of me. And they did.
My goodness.
So I thought of that as an achievement because I did it because it was the correct thing to do. Not that I had anything against the guy that was doing the job. He was doing a great job, and we worked well together. But, you know, the law is the law, and there was no way that I was going to break it.
I think that's the integrity. So we see this in other situations with community clubs where people's ego come into it and they want to bypass any of the constitutions. And it's important that you, in those situations, whether it's in your workplace or in social clubs, that you keep to the constitution, that you keep to the guidelines. And I think it's very important because that's where integrity is.
Oh, yeah.
And, and then people know you for the person that stands up for what's right, not what's easy or what's determined by someone else.
I could give you not less than 20 examples where I was threatened with death, legal action, bankruptcy, all those sorts of things where people were knowingly doing the wrong thing. I refused to concede.
And that's why you can sleep at night.
Yes. and in many cases, it was at my cost. Let's go back to when we had the first Panhellenic Games, and that was like mini Olympics between Greeks from different states around. And we didn't have a coach for the female athletes. So I went and bought a book that was written by Jess Jarver on coaching athletics, paid for all the equipment that we needed, and we won about 6 medals.
Oh, fantastic.
So
that's a can-do attitude.
Well, somebody had to do it. It's a case of, and that's always what I've wanted to do, is to say, we did it. Not we, not I, we.
We. That's a team.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, what a great story. Michael, tell me, I know that it's your mother that's been the biggest influence. So
Sure.
She's been amazing, I can tell. And the stories that you're telling so far, I know are anchored back to her.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. And with the support of your loving wife. Yeah, that's beautiful. So tell me, is there a particular book that you've read that has helped your mindset, or a series of books? Or
I fell in love with the series by Khalil Gibran of The Prophet and all his books, and there's about 20 books of his. He was, I think, ahead of his time, but he was a person who loved people and loved the idea of people around him progressing, and they all wed with me. And what happened, I was doing some drafting work at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, and went at our house opposite the mosque in the city. And Richard Harris was actually reciting the book of the Prophet on the ABC at, from 2 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the morning. And I fell in love with that so much. I then started writing poetry when I first listened to him, and I keep doing that. And I rang the ABC because I didn't know what it was, because they didn't announce what the record was throughout the whole program. And they did the research on it and told me who it was, and I then finished up with a copy of the record and the books. So
It's fantastic. See, we never know where inspiration comes from, where the influence comes from.
yeah,
And I think when you're open as a citizen of the world, you can be influenced and be open to learning from other cultures.
indeed.
Learning without borders.
It's a bit like that, yeah. And when you talk about my mum, as I say, lived in the city. I doubt that there was one day, or probably may have been one day a week, that she didn't have people visit her, right, to wish her well, to help her out. There were a group of young people who were connected with Sister Janet Mead, and they would go around and have lunch with my mum. A couple of them were solicitors, and they'd jump on their bikes and go around and have lunch with my mum. And Sister Janet Mead's mum, who couldn't speak any Greek, and my mum's English was very poor, but they sat together, in holy matrimony between them, because they were just lovely people.
Isn't that wonderful?
Just lovely people.
Wonderful.
And you could never go to my mum's place and leave empty-handed, even if it was a Minty.
Yes.
And she had the nickname of Mrs. Minty.
Oh my goodness, my mother was Mrs. Minty. All the grandchildren remember the Minties.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so fun, isn't it? Benchmarks of success. What are they? Are they profit? Is it relationships?
Just relationships and just the satisfaction of a job well done.
Yeah.
I just have a look at what we do with the Glendy Greek Festival, because I was one of its founding members. We would have probably started the Glendy 2 years earlier, but I insisted that we get all our approvals, all the legal aspects done, proper support programs, open the door for other clubs and societies to make money on the back of the Glendy, right? And in those days, most of the Greek clubs and societies had bought properties themselves, and they needed an outlet where they could make money. Now, where there were at least 4 clubs in the first Glendy Festival who made over 100,000 each, and our club made probably $10.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
But it wasn't for us.
It was a collaboration for the community.
It was community, and the whole idea of a Glendy Festival was to show off the Greek community, what it had done. And so those sorts of measures were probably the goal every time. Same with the Greek Professionals Association of Victoria, which I then became the president of. I was responsible for the first ethnic Chamber of Commerce in South Australia. And they were the wins for me.
Yes. Creating communities, creating the networks.
Yeah, correct.
It's interesting, on the weekend, one of my late mother's friends gave me a photo of her and my mum making lukumathas, which are the honey donuts, at the Glendy Festival.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I have to show you that later.
Yeah, you must do that. Yeah.
But yeah, that was about the community coming along to support Glendy and Glendy supporting the community.
Yeah.
And, it's been amazing celebration in South Australia, honouring Greek culture.
Well, I'm doing a collection of plants at the moment, which I want to give to some charities. And a guy came yesterday. He's 4th generation Chinese, and he said that he got more information about thalassemia and how he should get his kids tested, right, at the first Glendy Festival.
At the first Glendy Festival.
Yeah, and that happened yesterday.
Wow. See, it's come full circle for both of us in the last week. Yeah. Look, I remember being part of the Leo's Club when you were part of the Lions Club, the Hellenic Lions.
Yeah.
And my sisters and I were part of the Leo's Club. And I remember what stood out to me there were times that you had guest speakers come along.
Yes.
To educate us, to enlighten us about certain topics. Yeah. And that was really quite, a wonderful experience for a young person growing up in a Greek household to actually have that opportunity. So I want to thank you actually for organising those sorts of things and for that committee to organise those sorts of events.
Well, we did that in Victoria as well, because when I joined that, we had over 300 professionals and graduates as members. Not one of those people had ever been to a restaurant other than a Greek restaurant or Italian or Turkish.
Yes.
Right.
Where food is on the table and you share it.
Yeah. But what we did, right, we took them out to where they have to use 5 sets of cutlery, 5 glasses, all of that sort of stuff. And they were amazed. We had, during the epidemic for gay relationships, HIV Aids, and we had Australia's leading medics running that program come and talk to 200, 300 Greeks who knew nothing about it.
That was a very dark time in the history of our life because it was an unknown disease and the way it was advertised was so gruesome.
Yes.
To actually to use that as a platform for education for the broader community is wonderful.
Yeah. So that's how I achieved anything that I did, was who got to know.
Yes.
Right, who learned from it.
Mm-hmm. And I think you've left an amazing legacy so far, Michael.
I hope so.
So tell me, what's the best piece of advice you've received?
Always do the business that you do, right, so that there are 2 winners and no losers. Whatever you do, always remember that the other person has a heart and a soul and deserves fair treatment. So if you buy a property or if you sell something, make sure there's a little bit left for him or her. I can remember being involved in a project where I was involved with 3 other partners. I have to say unashamedly, the 3 of them made a lot of money. I didn't make a penny, right? Only because I was cheated. Move on.
Cut your losses.
Yeah, they're no longer my partners, let me tell you.
No, you know when to set healthy boundaries and when...
Exactly. Yeah. So
the philosophy of a win-win, I like that, because it means there's opportunity for both people to come out of the transaction or whatever it is in a good place.
A good place.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And to feel good about it.
Yeah.
Because the bad feelings about something are lasting.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
I erred in one of my decisions in maintaining my cool, right? But rather than stay in Adelaide and run over the whole bloody busload of them, right, I left Adelaide.
How long were you away for?
4 years.
You needed to pick yourself up and
just move on.
That's very safe boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's also protecting the way that you're going to react to something.
Sure.
You responded more appropriately.
Totally.
Rather than react.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that's where the power is.
I've got no doubt about that. I know that I could have made an ass of myself if I'd stayed. What the hell?
Yeah, we move on.
Move on.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, I think if I had my chances again today, I would have made sure that whatever I was doing was not totally only for others. I would have picked up, even if it was the crumbs, and said there was something in it for me. For example, I had opportunities with properties, right? And somebody would say to me, I'd like to buy that. Oh, okay. Or something like that. So it didn't worry me too much. I wasn't there trying to make money for money's sake. But I also believed that I spent a lot of my time, money and family time, worrying about other people and not enough about my immediate circle and my own person.
Okay.
Right. So there were areas where I could have or should have done more for my parents, my family, my friends, and I look back now and I think, well, you could have had it easier now than you are by looking after you for some of it. I can remember when we were playing sport, we had a lot of migrant kids come over, and if we wanted to get some of them to play volleyball for us or something like that, I don't have a car. I can't get there. So I'd pay for the cab, or I'd go and get them their equipment, all at my expense, right? I never relied on the club or the association to buy it for them. I think some of that I would regret because it was never really appreciated by the recipients. It was appreciated by the organisation, but not the individual recipients. And
Yes.
I think that sometimes there's selfishness or ego. All right. In some cases now, I regret that I didn't do a little bit more for me.
Yes, yes. I think it's about having the harmony in life, that you can rise by lifting others,
Yes.
which you've done a lot of, but at the same time, protecting that little bit for yourself.
Correct.
To allow yourself to rise for you and your family.
Correct.
And your immediate family. I think when you're an empath and you're a giving person and you want the better outcome for everyone, sometimes that comes at the personal cost.
Oh, it has many times. But,
yeah.
At the end, I still live in the knowledge that, hey, I can sleep at night.
Yes, exactly. And that's priceless.
Yeah, it is.
That's priceless. So, Michael, I like to finish my podcast with 22 questions, and these are like one-word answers where the audience can learn a little bit more about you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You're ready. What makes you smile?
Baby laugh.
What's your favourite cuisine?
Greek, believe it or not.
That's funny, isn't it? If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Madrid.
Do you prefer to text or to call?
Call.
Do you play a musical instrument? Do you sing or dance or perhaps hum? Or whistle?
Whistle.
What's your happy place?
At a desk with a pen.
Would you like me to pass you one?
I would, because I'd write down some answers for some of the questions.
What's your happy place?
Same place.
What movie would you recommend?
Name is.
I love it. Do you have a favourite song or artist?
No, I thought about that. No, I don't, believe it or not.
What's your favourite city and why?
Adelaide.
Do you prefer white wine, red wine, champagne, or some other drink?
A lot. No, that was a joke. That was a joke.
Oh no, the
red
secret's
wine.
out, guys.
Red wine.
What's your biggest strength?
Honestly.
If you could catch up with anyone, who would it be?
My late wife.
Oh, gorgeous. What's your favourite meal, breakfast, lunch or dinner?
Breakfast.
What's your favourite time of the day?
Before noon.
What was the best holiday you've had?
Europe, 1974.
Do you enjoy sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Do you speak another language?
Yes.
And what is that?
English.
You're so funny. Because Greek's your first language.
Correct.
Is there a cause that you're passionate about?
Peace.
If you could have 3 guests at your table, who would they be?
Mr. Bakoyannis, one-time Minister for Sport in Greece, Angela Merkel, and Kate Blanchett.
If you were a hashtag, what would you be?
Missed.
How would you like to be remembered?
Honest.
Thank you, Michael Taliangis, for joining me here today.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Yes.
You've been listening to Business Class, presented by Eugenia Panterhos, founder of Business Class Collective. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcast, subscribe, rate and review this podcast. Share the love and let your family and friends know too. You can follow Business Class Collective on Instagram and Facebook. Join me next time.